USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
Welcome to the Game of the Week podcast for Wednesday, November 27th, 2019. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly.
And this week's Game of the Week brings us to Madison Square Garden as Boston University and Cornell will renew their red-hot hockey rivalry on every other year. Special event held down in New York City. We're now joined by the head coach of Boston University. That's Albie O'Connell. Albie, always a special time to be able to go down to New York and play what is really one of the older, now non-conference rivals for Boston University.
Well, yeah, Cornell's the brass of their league, and through college hockey, obviously this year they're having a great year, and they got a great tradition with their program, and it's been a big rivalry in the past and in the earlier days, and now it's we're lucky to have the opportunity to play at Madison Square Garden, especially versus Cornell, who's a storied program. So we're pretty excited about it.
Albie, looking at your schedule to date, a 500 record, but interestingly, you have more ties than wins. 5 ties, 4 wins. What do you like about this team thus far? And is there maybe a search at this point for a little bit more consistency?
Well, I think we're obviously pretty young, with so many new bodies. We've got 11 freshmen and 2 grad transfers, so we've got 13 new guys. We lost our top center for the year in Ty Monte, and we've had a little bit of a injury plague in the first half, seeing Cam Crotty, our best DB, out for 5 games. Harper's been out for, I think, 3 or 4 games. And then we lost Sam Stevens, Logan Cockrell, Jack DeBoer. So we've had a lot of guys who haven't played. So we've had a lot of different lineups and a lot of guys learning on the job. And we've played a pretty tough schedule so far with some of the teams within our league, and going up to Maine, playing on the road we had just enough players to play in that series. We only had 6 guys out of the lineup for those games up there. So we've grinded it out. Guys have had to play a lot of minutes. Guys have been in situations that are brand new to them, and some guys, we've had defensemen playing center and wings playing center. We just lost 3 centers and some of our key returning players. So it's been good. Do we want a couple more wins? Yeah. Have we had some leads that we're kind of learning how to manage games and win as a group, and we're getting better at it. We're learning how to manage the puck better. We're learning how not to beat ourselves and put ourselves in spots. The penalty game has been, in the last few games, it's been frustrating. We've taken some untimely penalties and a bunch of 5-minute majors, some for some just part of the game that kind of a bad situation, and some not the smartest penalties that have put our team at duress and not a good spot for portions of the game, which in turn tires people out. But we're happy with our leadership. We're happy with the guys, how guys are progressing. A lot of the 4 freshmen D who are getting acclimated to college hockey and feel like they're getting better and better as we go. And we're excited to play games, because that's where we're learning in practice. And obviously the games are, when the bullets are flying. So we're learning lessons each game, and hopefully as we continue, we just keep getting smarter as a group and just keep growing.
Albie, the best early story of the season maybe is the offensive play of defenseman David Ferentz. 10 goals to this point, 8 of them coming on the power play. He had just 7 goals in 2 years combined leading into this season. What's changed with him? Where did his confidence go? Has it increased that much that he is just a real special presence back there on the blue line?
Well, it all started in the summer. I think he's in the best shape that he's ever been in. He had a really good summer, really took care of his body, and he's able to play more minutes and from the offensive side of it, defensive side of it. The other thing that he's using more is using his shot. He's always had that as a weapon. He's always deferred and tried to pass the puck. He's using shot more on the power play, and he's become the guy. You know, he's kind of sitting behind some guys with Fabro and Chad Chris, and some other guys we've had over the years, but it's kind of his time. You know, I think he had some growing pains his first year. He was playing a little bit of full and a little bit of D. You know, he was in the lineup. He was out of the lineup a little bit. He was learning how to play at our level. And last year he had some really good stretches of hockey that he played for us. Wasn't as consistent as it is now, but I think that's in part due to confidence, and a lot of the confidence grew from being in the best shape and able to hit the ground running. But he's about as good as we've seen from an offensive standpoint since I've been at BU. We hold him in high regard with the McAvoys and Grizzlicks and Fabro's guys who are all Americans, and he's having kind of that campaign. He's always had the talent, but now it's all coming together. And you know, sometimes it takes a little bit longer for guys, but he's always had the self belief, and we've always had belief in him. It was just a maturity and process for him to get to where he is.
This season seems to be the season of the graduate transfer goaltender, and Boston University is no exception with Sam Tucker coming in. He's had most of the starts for you in net. How's that transition been, and how quickly was he able to acclimate to being part of the Terriers?
I think he did a good job of acclimating over the summer, because he came into summer school and he got to know a lot of the guys and get a feel for the campus and whatnot. He's a very bright guy, really confident kid, and he's been through some ups and downs, you know, through injuries, to playing, to not playing, to being a number one, to playing as a backup. So he's had some ups and downs that we haven't really had to live through. You know, he did it at another school, which we were pretty fortunate, and that's the nice thing about a grad transfer. You get a guy that's a little bit older, and especially a goaltender, a little bit more experience. So he's got confidence. He's got a real lot of self-belief, and you know, he didn't get off to a rocky start, but his numbers weren't fantastic. But he never really gets too fazed by what's transpired in the game. He can reset and play. So that's one of the big things that he's been able to do. And he's played in some tough buildings. You know, he's played at Lowell. He's played at Maine, which is about as hard as you can play, and he played terrific up there. He's getting a little bit more acclimated to our league, but I think he's a guy that has, you know, a lot of belief in what he can do, and I think the team gets some confidence when he's in the net.
Speaking of Hockey East, the last couple of seasons, things have come down to the wire as far as standings, and even this year, nearing the midpoint, only 3 points separating seventh place from first place. What do you see going down the stretch in Hockey East? More of the same?
I would think so. I think there's a lot of parity. I think the teams that are at the top, you know, have been probably the most consistent, and maybe have gotten some of the most consistent goaltending. You see some of the numbers on some of those guys at the top of our league, and they're kind of gaudy. You know, with Lowell, I think he's upwards around a .950 save percentage. So I think the league is a little bit wide open, you know, in some respects, and it's always tight in Hockey East. And this year it seems to be a little bit tighter. There's no one that's really pulled away from anyone, and I think it's gonna come down to which teams can keep getting better, you know, and stay healthy and get the right goaltending, and then just continue to grow from, you know, 5-on-5 to special teams, and just kind of getting their game to the highest level as a team.
We mentioned Red Hot Hockey. Obviously, the opponent is Cornell. Albie, I don't know how much you've had a chance to take a look at them, but obviously they come in on 8-0 record. What do you like about this team? What are some of the challenges you're going to face when you face off against the Big Red?
Well, they're really thorough, you know, and you look at their team defense, they don't give up a lot of goals. You look at they're scoring a lot of goals. Their power play is good. Their penalty is good. They've got obviously some older guys that have, you know, really emerged for them. Their goaltender has been terrific since he got to Cornell. And we played him in his freshman year at Red Hot Hockey, and you know, he played terrific in that game as just a young guy. So they're always a tough opponent. They've got some size, they've got some strength. But the one thing about them that's underrated is, their skill level. Like they've got a lot of talented guys, and you can't score that many goals if you're not if you don't have guys that can finish and make plays, and on top of it, have a good power play. So I think they're going to be a tough opponent. Like they're going to be, just on paper, they look like the toughest opponent that we'll face this year. We've had some good tests. We've played some teams that are big and strong and heavy, and we've played some teams that kind of come at you a lot. So hopefully those were good tests leading up to a big stage. It's nice to have some of our younger guys. Like I said, we're the youngest team in the country, but I think we've a lot of younger guys that played a lot of minutes so far, so they've gained some experience. So hopefully they can take some of those experiences from games and take it on to the big stage.
It is red hot hockey this Saturday night, Madison Square Garden, Cornell against Boston University. Should be another great matchup in this rivalry. Albie O'Connell, head coach of BU, thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
We've got more of the Game of the Week podcast to come. Our look at the Cornell-Boston University game and some of the other big matchups of the weekend.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online.
Welcome back to USCHO Game of the Week podcast. Jim, let's start out first with the Game of the Week. Coming up on Saturday, Cornell and Boston University at Madison Square Garden, a rivalry that goes back many, many decades, but they haven't played in the same league for 35 years, yet it's still a big deal. What do you look for in this one?
Well, I think the fact that they renewed this rivalry and they did it down at Madison Square Garden goes a long way, and that kind of put it on a bigger stage and brought back a lot of the great memories from the 60s and 70s that these teams had. The one thing that we've learned from this game when it's played every other year is that the favorite doesn't always come out as the favorite. We've seen some really good BU teams play some maybe not as great Cornell teams, and Cornell comes out on top. We've had a couple of ties, I think, in there as well. But then at the other end, you have a Cornell team right now that's red hot. BU is kind of looking for their identity still a little bit. This could be the opportunity if BU can get the win and give Cornell their first loss to get their season going. At the same time, Cornell, they're just rolling and they'd love to keep going. So on the ice, I think it should be a pretty good matchup. And it's one, it's not BCBU, it's not Michigan State, but it's darn close. These two teams really hated each other back in the old ECAC days.
And there's still some people alive to remember it. So for them, it'll probably be a big deal too. Let's turn to the only conference matchup going on among ranked teams, and that's in the Big Ten. On Saturday and Sunday, you've got number 20 Michigan State at number 11 Ohio State. The Spartans back in the USCHO.com poll for the first time in probably that I can remember over the past several years. I don't know exactly when, but it's been several years.
Yeah, it's been a while for them, and they're playing good hockey. Obviously, last weekend against Notre Dame, taking 4 of the 6 league points. That was a big part of it. Now they're going to play an Ohio State team. They should be pretty hungry. They came off a split with Penn State, but they're, Ohio State can score a lot of goals. Michigan State, they get their offense going at times. They can be pretty dangerous. I think of their defense probably their stronger suit. Ohio State at the same time, they're pretty good on the back end of the puck. So I'm not sure what to expect out of this one. And, it's a Saturday, Sunday kind of, this weekend is almost like that first week when you come back from the break after Christmas. The days of the week don't really matter. Everybody feels a little thrown off by the day. I don't know how much Saturday, Sunday as opposed to Friday, Saturday affects these guys. But it should be a really good league series in the Big Ten.
Well, here's a chance for Minnesota fans to maybe get some brief answers for their desires to see old rivalries keep going. So much lamenting over the dissolving of the old WCHA, but the great rivalry of number 3 North Dakota at Minnesota takes stage on Thanksgiving night and on Friday.
It's crazy to play on Thanksgiving. That's a different little twist in this, and I think it's pretty cool because I think we watch football on Thanksgiving night. Why not go out to a hockey game? I guess it's very much the same thing. For Minnesota, they've been just not the team that Bob Motzko, his crew, their fans, everybody wanted them to be thus far. North Dakota, on the other end, maybe being a better team at 10-1-2, better than most people expected. I'm sure most of the North Dakota fans that make that trip across the border into the St. Paul, Minneapolis-St. Paul area, if they have them, they'll be wearing their North Dakota colored Holy Cross jerseys that we all remember from the mid-2000s that were printed after Holy Cross knocked off Minnesota in the NCAA tournament. That was always still one of my favorite memories of North Dakota fans, but it should be a good game. I mean, these two teams play a big enough rivalry. This is not a nationally ranked Minnesota team, but I think a lot of people had big enough expectations for them. And North Dakota, hey, let's show you. Let's show it now on the table. You're a 10-1-2 team. You've been playing great hockey. Can you carry it over when the emotion's going to be on the line?
There's another great non-league intra-state rivalry going on Friday and Saturday. Number 1 Minnesota State visiting number 8 Minnesota Duluth.
Yeah, that's a great one. In the way that Minnesota State's played out of the gates here, they're obviously, they probably have a big target on their back in Minnesota Duluth. They're on the upswing right now. The way that they've, started the season a little bit slow, but they've played very well in the last few weekends. This should be a pretty heavy series. These are two teams, I think, that really can ride you, really can play physical. This is a heavyweight series. This is the one that, this is Tyson Holyfield. I don't even remember some of the good boxing matches from my days, but this is two big teams going at each other. There'll be a lot of ice bags needed after the series.
Another non-conference matchup is a home-and-home series Friday and Saturday. Number 16 Bowling Green and number 5 Notre Dame.
Yeah, and Notre Dame, obviously, they're maybe licking their wounds a little. They want to get back onto the ice as soon as possible. When you really look at things, they didn't have the outcomes that they wanted last weekend up in Michigan State. Bowling Green, kind of the same thing. They played well to earn a 5-0 win last Friday, but then a 3-1 loss to Lake Superior. They want to get back on track. So these are two teams. They're looking for a little bit of redemption. It's interesting. This is being played as a home and home, probably a little over a 2-hour ride, I'm going to guess, between the two campuses. But this should be another pretty good series. This is a little bit more skill. I know Bowling Green likes to play a little heavier game, but Notre Dame, that's a lot of skill in that team, and it's going to be which style of play maybe will win out.
In the Boston area, there's a matchup between two ranked teams on Friday night. Unbeaten Harvard hosts number 14 BC. Harvard ranked number 9.
Yeah, I mean, Harvard has been undefeated to this point. People have said, well, they haven't gotten out of the Ivy League, the ECAC, and they really haven't played anybody well. We'll see. This is going to be a pretty good opponent. BC, they've played some of their better hockey over the last maybe the last 3-4 weeks, and they'll come in with a little bit hot. And this is a team with both teams have a lot of NHL draft picks on it. This will be a scout heavy game. There'll be a lot of NHL people in the stands. A lot of talent on the ice. This is two pretty fast teams that can get up and down the ice, so we'll see which team can prevail.
It's not really a tournament, but it's a preset matchup. Number 15 Lowell and unranked Merrimack take on number 7 Penn State and unranked Rensselaer.
I think there's a trophy out there for this somewhere. I think Lowell has been calling this a tournament. I haven't seen Merrimack call it that. But the matchup that really intrigues me out of this is Penn State and Lowell on Saturday. That'll be a pretty good tilt where you have such a high flying Penn State team against a very good defensive team in Lowell. They like to grind you down. I think also both games at Merrimack always interest me. I think playing in that barn where it's a little smaller, a team like Penn State that can get up and down the ice, they're going to be slowed down just because the ice size isn't as big as they're used to. So that should be interesting as well, seeing Merrimack against Penn State on Friday. Whatever comes of this, I'm not sure whether there'll be a trophy, whether there'll be an MVP at the end of it, but it doesn't matter. There's some pretty big non-conference games on the line for all 4 teams.
One more non-conference matchup that's home and home that we should mention. Number 10, UMass taking on unranked Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac hasn't had the success they'd like to see, and their road record is not very good so far. UMass has had a couple of stumbles as well.
Stumbles, but I think that, talking to Greg Carville this week, he's pretty happy with the way his team has played at times. He's looking for some more consistency. I think Quinnipiac was great out of the gate, and then they started to stumble, and those stumbles haven't really been fixed yet. So I think that both of these teams are looking to make a little bit of a statement this weekend. These guys have played a couple of times in the past few years, and they've always been good series. So I think this is one that should have a lot of eyeballs on it, because it is one of those series with a lot of talent. Two teams that are kind of the emerging talents of the NCAA. These are both teams that have been in 3 out of the last 7 national title games, if I'm doing my math right. 2 for Quinnipiac, 1 for UMass. So there's a lot on the line here that people should be watching for.
And then there's the Friendship Four in Belfast, a tournament you've been to, Jim, and have spoken of fondly. Number 12, Northeastern takes on New Hampshire in the first round, as do Princeton and Colgate.
Yeah, I mean, this is just such a great event. The teams already are over there. They left on Sunday for this, and they'll spend an entire week between Dublin. I think most of them are starting in Dublin, then driving up to Belfast, probably by today, getting used to the city and that sort of stuff. It's a great event, and it's well put on. I went the first year, which is now 4 years ago. This is the 5th edition of the tournament. And I think coming home on the plane, I said to somebody, they'll never be able to pull it off like this again. It was such a good time. And everything I've heard about the teams that have gone in the last 3 years just say that it keeps getting better and better every year. And this is a tournament that I know they have commitments for next year to keep it going, and already some other teams that haven't been announced but have probably committed for 2 years from now. So it does seem like the city of Belfast wants this to keep going. Obviously, Joe Britannia, who's obviously the outgoing commissioner of Hockey East, he was a big part of this. Steve Hagwell as well. There's also been some schools that have been instrumental in getting this going and keeping it going. But obviously with Joe going this year, this will be his kind of last hurrah over there. And I'm sure that'll be hopefully a nice send-off, because the people of Belfast really seem to hold him and Steve Hagwell in pretty high esteem. So should be a great, it's just a great city to play hockey, and they love their hockey over there. So we'll see who comes out on top, but no matter what, just a great experience for these 4 teams and their student athletes.
Well, we wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and some great hockey. If you didn't catch it this week, we also had on our USCHO Spotlight podcast, Mike Snee from College Hockey Inc. You don't want to miss that one. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.